Good afternoon, folks, and welcome to the Pervasive Media Studio Lunchtime Talk. These talks are live every Friday at 1 p.m, both here in the building and live online. So whether you're in Bristol or you're far away, you can join in the conversation, Jazz. My name is Martin O'Leary. I'm the head of studio here. I'm a white man in my 40s, long hair and a beard, wearing a salmon pink sweatshirt, which is the same color as both Nikki, our BSL interpreter, and Danny, our tech today. So we are trendsetters. Every Friday, we open the doors of the Pervasive Media Studio for Open Studio Friday, where we offer you the chance to spend some time in our space by hot desking alongside our residents and staff from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. So, an especially big welcome to anyone who's new to the studio. Can anyone who's new to the studio put your hand up? Hello, welcome.
Hiya.
This bit is for you. What is the Pervasive Media Studio? We're a diverse and collaborative community exploring creativity and technology, everything from comedy to coding and product development to performance art. And we're a partnership between Watershed, where we are right now, UWE Bristol and the University of Bristol, and we're funded by Arts Council England, as well as by generous donations from members of the public, just like yourselves. We offer studio space, including desks, meeting rooms, events and opportunities, all for free to our residents as part of a spirit of generosity and mutual exchange. And most of all, we're a space for people to take risks with embryonic ideas and to make some time for collaboration. So just a few notes before we begin. Please do feel free to move around. You can make a cup of tea or grab some water in the kitchen back there. I'm sorry to say that our coffee machine is broken. Please don't put any water in it. It comes pouring out the back. It's not good. We have a quiet space just next to this space. So if you need to take a break at any point, it's just my left, your right, around the corner. There's some sofas and beanbags and things. Reasonably well soundproofed. You can go in there and take a moment. We're not expecting a fire drill today. If you hear a fire alarm, it's probably real. The fire exits are at the other end of the studio. Again, my left, your right, on either side. But in any event, the studio team will direct you to them should we need them. And then there are accessible toilets, including baby change, over there in the corridor just next to the kitchen. There'll be a Q&A at the end of this talk. So those of you who are watching online, please pop your questions into the YouTube chat. Vic is here. She will be your voice in the room today. If you're in the building, please raise your hand and we'll send around a microphone so the folks at home and Nikki can hear what you're saying. You can get news on all of our future talks by heading to watershed.co.uk/studio or the new section of our website, watershed.co.uk/takepart. Or you can find us on social media at Pervasive Media Studio at mastodon.social on Mastodon, at PM Studio UK of bsky.social on Blue Sky, at Pervasive Media Studio on Instagram, or just look up Pervasive Media Studio on LinkedIn. All right, our speakers for today are Euella Jackson and Jess Bunyan, the outgoing co-directors of Rising Arts Agency. And today they're going to talk about how they're transitioning the leadership of their radical creative agency every 5 years. And they'll also share a bit about the design of an open recruitment process for co-directors that they hope others can adopt to make space for new leaders. So please join me in giving a very warm welcome to Euella and Jess.
Hey. Okay.
Martin just asked me if we have like regular sides that we stand on, and I was like, nope. Haven't figured that out in 5 years.
Yeah.
But hi everyone, welcome. It's really nice to be here. Do you wanna? We are.
Hi, I'm Euella Jackson. I'm one of the co-directors of Rising.
And I'm Jess Bunyan. I'm the other co-director of Rising. My pronouns are she, her. I'm a tall, pale white woman wearing black jeans and a bright orange shirt, and I have ginger hair.
I'm a shorter black woman with red curly hair at the moment, and I'm dressed in predominantly all black, and I'm wearing glasses. Okay, so do you want to tell us a little bit about you?
Yeah, we thought we'd start this presentation the way that we never do, where we talk about us as individuals, because that's something we're definitely, like Martin's just introduced us as the outgoing co-directors of Rising. We're kind of just stepping into this space of back into this space of who we are as individuals. So I'm Jess. I am a producer. I kind of did a lot of work around our agency side of our work, professionalizing what our services are, producing projects with our community. I'm theoretically a textile artist. I like to make big, plushy things. Systems thinker, I don't really know what that means, but basically the thing that I've really brings me joy is like making systems work for humans. And that's a lot of what I brought to Rising in my term as co-director, but also before that when I was development manager. And also I am a mum. I'm the first person to go on mat leave at Rising Arts Agency, and I'm feeling that very heavily this morning with a 5:30 a.m. wake up in my bed.
Yeah, so I'm Euella. I am a creative. I started at Rising as an engagement producer or an engagement community producer, supporting our community at Rising and kind of growing that and thinking about what our offers are. But I'm also a creative. I'm a filmmaker, storyteller. My journey started very much at Watershed, at Rife as a content creator, and from there just thinking about how you tell stories to bring people on the journey of social change. So yeah, that's me. And tell us a bit about Rising.
Sure.
Sorry, I'm just like handing it all over to you with your 5:30 a.m. start.
So yeah, Rising Arts Agency is a creative agency that supports young people in Bristol aged 18 to 30-ish. Those edges are very fuzzy.
Yeah.
We've been co-led now for 5 years. We have been youth-led for 5 years. We were in our 20s when we became co-directors in 2021. And our kind of remit is around underrepresented young people. So those who are underrepresented in the sector, we are majority people of colour. We have a large proportion of neurodivergent and disabled young people, a lot of trans and non-binary folk as well. And we believe that creativity is the best route to making social change. And we also believe that the energy, enthusiasm and ideas of young people with creativity is the perfect mixture for making that change. Our big thing is around getting them paid work, so paid well and good opportunities. So I think kind of working against a lot of what the kind of systemic issues are in the sector. So when we're putting underrepresented young people into institutions and art organisations, we couldn't help but want to burn the whole thing down and recreate it.
And I think in terms of the way in which we work, so Rising, as Jess said, like we do, a percentage of our work is around supporting that agency and getting young people paid opportunities, and the types of work that we get is really important. So it's not just about getting someone a job as, you know, doing a mural or thinking about doing someone's branding. That's one aspect of it, and often that's the first step that someone needs to kind of be able to like build their portfolio, but also thinking about bringing young people in as consultants and leaders. So we do a lot of work around youth leadership, putting young people onto boards, thinking about actually how can we change the perception of young people as like creative academics, or thinking about them as researchers, and what having those young people, the ingenuity of them, what can that do to a space, whether it's a research space, whether it's a professional space, whether it's a leadership space. So in terms of what we've been on a mission to do is kind of help people reposition young people as leaders.
This is just a little bit about kind of the history of Rising. So we are going into our second leadership transition. So our first leadership transition was from Camina Walton, who founded Rising in 2016, to me and Euella.
We did that
in 2021. And Camina's term was very much defined by like these big flagship projects. So there was Who's Culture, led by Rosanna Diaz, who some of you probably know. And that was all around exploring the kind of data gap of young people of colour's access to culture in the city. And that really changed the kind of makeup of Rising's community. It made us majority people of colour and Black specifically. And we became really known for our kind of racial justice work in the wake of that project. And then there was also Be It. So this was funded through Arts Council's Transforming Leadership programme. And this was all about kind of interrogating and reimagining what leadership could look like, and happened to be when COVID hit, lockdown happened, leaders were completely disappearing, and really informed also our co-leadership model, as this programme was also co-led by Rosanna and Prince, who sat in the audience. And we kind of learned a lot from them in terms of how they co-led that project and worked with that community of young people, and that really fed into kind of our transition and our co-leadership thinking. And then finally, there was Whose Future, which is another way that a lot of people came to find out about our work. So in 2020, when the advertisers disappeared, we were approached to fill billboards and poster sites around Bristol with the voices, artwork, and demands of young people from our community. So this massively raised our profile. Like, our agency work doubled, I think, in the year after Whose Future, and this was a massive kind of marker of like what we could do with this incredible community of young people. So yeah, very much these kind of flagship projects. It really supported us to grow the team and the kind of profile of our work.
Yeah. And then so in terms of, as Jess mentioned, we stepped up in 2021, and very much the way in which, so Jess and I, as we mentioned, were already in the team when we became co-directors, and Kamina approached both of us individually and kind of asked whether we would be up for stepping up into leadership or leading Rising when Kamina stepped out, and we both kind of said yes, but it would have to be with the other person. So there were all these kind of things happening at the same time with Rosanna and Prince co-leading Be It, Jess and I kind of identifying actually there are some skills that we don't have. And Jess and I hadn't really worked together that much in the team, even though it was a small team, but I was very much community side. Jess was very much development, thinking about the agency, professionalizing systems, but together, like, this is what we've been able to achieve. So, so On Board is a program that is kind of carried on from when Kamina was was director, but it's around supporting young people onto boards, and as I mentioned about that leadership program, and thinking about young people in governance more generally. In 2022, we did our Power and Partnerships project, which was a collaboration with King's College London, and it was part of a program with the Centre for Cultural Value, exploring the power imbalances between within culture sector partnerships, particularly when you've got a smaller organisation, maybe grassroots, working with a bigger institution, and some of the kind of things that happen, what happens particularly for those individuals that are holding those projects, but also like institutionally what happens to those communities. And that we actually won an award for that, which was very cute, recognising I think just recognising the role, the way in which we did that collaboration with academics, because, you know, academia, although like UE and UOB are part of this space, you know, there's not a one-size-fits-all in the way that academics engages with communities, and often it can be quite clumsy or process-driven and not actually thinking about the role of creativity or people or human experiences in that. So yeah, that was our Power and Partnerships project, and then our Caring Work Cultures work. So this is a program that we developed and offer to different sector organisations, but it's very much a development of the work that we've been doing throughout around how we actually build these environments that are caring for people, putting people first, and also how do you make that translate into policies and procedures within an organisation, particularly when you're an organisation that's growing as well. So those are some of the big things that have come as a result of our term. Sorry, Nikki, I probably chatted way too quickly there, but you've done great.
And then we're about to enter term 3. So we closed the open recruitment for the next co-directors of Rising on the Sunday just gone. And we've kind of been on this process of designing what it means to openly recruit for co-directors. Because like Euella said, we were already part of the team. We were invited to step up by Kamina. That has lots of benefits in terms of the inherent knowledge that we had about the agency, but it's also quite a closed opportunity for those outside the agency who are not already engaging in our work, or anyone else who was engaging in our work that wasn't given that opportunity. And I think a big thing me and Euella have done is really like try to codify a lot of Rising's values into our systems as well. And a big part of that is open recruitment wherever possible. So we've done that for our community. Now we do open applications and people can join periodically. We do that for all of our kind of employment roles and all of our agency opportunities that are fully open to our community, rather than just approaching the people that we know have been a photographer before. We stick it out to everybody and then people can do it for the first time. So it's really important to us to see if we could think about a way to design an open recruitment process. And the way that we've come to that is through working with a transition steering group and also using this idea of matchmaking people into co-directorships. So our transition steering group was made up of, oh, do you want to talk about them? Sorry.
Well, I don't mind, but yeah. So yeah, we're made up of a mix of like sector professionals, members of Rising's community, people who are not part of the culture sector, maybe working in governance. So for us, we put out an open call, and it was really quite, I guess, key for us to try and get a mix of those ideas and perspectives around what a leadership transition, particularly, is something that we'd never designed before, of like who might be able to bring things that maybe we hadn't considered, or how these people might work together. So we worked together from, I guess, around July to December, designing this process. We had a really intensive day where we came together in August during our August of rest. Yeah, it was restful in a different way. It was restful in a different way. It was really good to kind of geek out about this sort of stuff. But to be able to think, first of all, we were looking at, okay, how do we want to work together in this space? How do we bring out the best of our expertise, but also our experiences, like thinking about how we might deal with conflict, and also understanding and decision-making processes, considering that like we've all never kind of done this before. And then it was kind of thinking about what are the kind of key questions that we have about this, because there are a lot of questions, particularly at that point where it's like, Jess and I had obviously known about this leadership transition ever since we stepped into the role. But in terms of like the fine details of like, okay, so when are you guys leaving? Or like, how are you gonna recruit them? Or like, how are you gonna recruit 2 people? Like, what are you looking for? You know, what happens if a member of the team applies and some, you know, all that stuff. It was a bit like, the process will be designed and we will trust. It was almost a bit culty, like we trust in the process. We trust in the process of whatever the process decides. So it was great to be able to, and if you go to our office now, we've still got the kind of all the post-it notes and the mapping of like the timeline, but also thinking about what are the key questions and what are the resources that you need to be able to design a process that enables people who have never led before, but also who aren't part of a co-leadership or have an existing collaborator, to be able to step forward and feel really confident about applying. And I think that is the thing. That was the thing I think was really important to us, of like, as Jess mentioned, like we've gone on a journey of professionalizing Rising and kind of building in these systems, and the Rising that we started with isn't the same as the one that we're handing over. And how do you kind of make sure that you can create a level of parity for someone to feel that they could step in at the same way that we could step in, without it being too unwieldy now or too whatever. But I'll let you continue about what we decided for the process.
Yeah, so this is the process that we came up with the transition steering group. And I think, just to say to Euella's point, a big part of it was also like, how do we start to detach ourselves from the processes and thinking of Rising, because we have been so synonymous with it for so long. And that was kind of part of the like, we don't want to create this in isolation, we want to consult with other people. So phase 1, which is kind of what we're in at the moment, is asking people to apply as individuals. And the stage 1 interviews will also be as individuals. What we have asked as part of the application process is if people have someone that they would particularly like to work with, or that they've worked with before, or anything like that. But we've also specified, like, please talk to that person before you apply.
Yeah.
And we've already had some people put someone who hasn't applied, and we've had people put like, I only want to work with this person even though we don't think they're a great match. So we're already starting to wade into all the conflicts of interest and difficult conversations that we know we're going to have as part of this process. So that's kind of the first stage. And then probably most of the people that get to the stage 1 interview will then go into this kind of leadership pool that we're going to create of everybody who applies. And from that, we hope to get, I can't remember if we've defined a number, 4 or 5, 5 or 6 pairs of potential co-directors. So kind of doing that matchmaking for them, looking at the skills that they've got, looking at the things that they've brought, and definitely there's a lot of like nuance in that, and that's probably the most pilot-y bit of this process that we're kind of unsure exactly how it's going to work.
Yeah.
And the whole idea is that they'll be matched, and then we'll do like an introduction meeting where they get a chance to be like, do I gel with this person or not? However they figure out if they want to spend 5 years together. And then kind of catch up with them individually afterwards and be like, good vibes, bad vibes, do you want to be matched again? And we've kind of committed to saying people could be potentially matched up to 2 times. But obviously, if the first one doesn't gel and there's no one else to be rematched with, that might mean that they don't continue in the process. So there's also going to be a lot, I think, of setting people up to be like, don't just say it's fine if it's not, because you will have to work with this person for 5 years. And like, it's way worse if it falls apart then than it does now. And trying to, through the interview process, like get an understanding of how people understand themselves and how much they have appetite for that kind of like vulnerability and honesty, I guess, because that is so much of the role. Like as co-directors of Rising, you're also like often working with your peers in a professional setting. You're also working in the cultural sector in a professional setting, but you're also trying to sort of rewrite the rules. So there's a lot of that navigating of different relationships, and this is almost like an introduction to that, if it's not something people have previous experience of. That's kind of March to April. And then the final phase, once everyone's happy in their match-made co-directorships, they will be paid a stipend to participate in a kind of planning workshop, which will be like a group workshop, where we're hoping to facilitate something that is not some of the gross group interviews that some of us may have been part of or heard about. Where they can kind of have an opportunity to speed run developing their vision for Rising. So the hope is each individual co-directorship will be able to have their vision of Rising. So it's not competitive with anybody else's in the space, but we can also kind of observe how they work together and also give people that opportunity to be paid to do that work. So if they can't do it outside of that space before the interview, they're not at a disadvantage. And then the second stage interviews will interview them together, and they will present that vision like to the interview panel. And then the final decision, we're hoping to be made sort of early to mid-May, and me and Euella are not part of that final decision. And we're kind of tag teaming the rest of it.
Yeah, throughout the process. So I'll be in the kind of shortlisting, the initial stage, first stage interviews, then hand over. Jess is then from matchmaking, second stage interview. So even though we're not one person, we do represent one perspective in terms of an existing co-director. So that's that's why we've decided to do that. But it's really nice also to not be part of that final decision, because already we're like, oof, it's going to be hard for whoever has to make that final decision. Because I think what we're imagining is going to happen is that there's going to be loads of people that can do this role, and we've intentionally tried to pitch it at anyone can do the role and build the support around them, that actually it's going to be a very much like, choosing between an orange and an apple than, comparing 2 oranges together. So these are some of the questions that we've gotten, I guess, the most from people interested in the process. Oh, it's only 24 past. Okay, cool. So what we thought is that we could ask each other the questions and trying to see, like, hopefully we can have a little bit of a conversation about some of those, maybe the things that we missed out in the presentation up until this point. But please, afterwards, if you have questions that are not part of this, please ask them, because this is part of the story. So I'm going to ask you, Jess.
Okay.
So why co-directors? I think, like one of the things that you mentioned earlier was about the fact that if someone doesn't have a match and they can't be rematched, and then it's like you might not be able to continue in the process, like why, what was the thinking behind that?
Yeah, so I think like co-directing, co-leadership has been so important for mine and Euella's term, that I think like for where Rising is at right now, it still feels like the right leadership model. And we've talked about like, oh, maybe there'll be more co-leaders, maybe it will go work towards a cooperative model. And we were actually part of some research back in, right at the beginning of our co-directorship around whether co-leadership, particularly in the cultural sector, is a good stepping stone to that more collective leadership and decision making. But that's kind of always been part of Rising. So we have an advisory board that's made up of our community. We have non-exec directors who are kind of part of our decision making as well. And our community is obviously like really part of everything we do and setting the direction for the agency. So that kind of collective leadership is so ingrained that it seems kind of crazy to go back to one person. And also I think it remains as a challenge to the sector about like what leadership means, particularly now when it is so hard and has been getting harder to be that one solo leader holding all the responsibility on your shoulders. We feel like co-leadership is a way to bring a bit more like care into that. Like I love being in a space with Euella and we afterwards doing the debrief where you're like, was that crazy? You know, did that person really say that? Did we not have that conversation 3 years ago? Have we not moved on? You know, and having someone to be like Jim to the camera with. And we've moved to a lot of like dual models actually. Like on board, we now recruit 2 young people onto a board, so they've got that person in the space in the same way. And I think like it's worked really well for us. And we also had, as part of the transition steering group, Gerald particularly was very sceptical about co-leadership and kind of didn't understand how it was different from a job share. And through the process of working, he was like, oh, I get it now, this is great. Like from seeing us work together and understanding why it's important. So yeah, that's why co-directors, Euella.
But yeah, really happy to chat more about that if anyone has any extra questions.
So why 5-year terms? I feel like we didn't even explain that it's 5-year terms.
Yeah.
So maybe start there.
Yeah. So I think, this was something that Kamina, it was kind of, when she set up Rising, her ambition was that if this agency was successful after 5 years, then she would hand it over to young people. And it was something that even I think we in the team didn't fully understand in terms of like, what, you know, why, you know, she wasn't retiring or anything. It was about a conscious step around co-leading or co-creation with young people and then being able to step away. And having conversations with her even since then, she was talking about actually, particularly after our Who's Future campaign, and we had a whole load of like racial backlash to that, and it was quite traumatic for our community. She did have questions of like, is this the right thing to be stepping away? Like, what does that mean? There's a difference between, I guess, like supporting people to step up and just kind of leaving them to just flop. But I think she came to the point of being like, no, I think this is what I believe in. Let's go. And so 5 years felt like a really, like for her, that was like a key point. And then with us, in terms of our co-leadership, like we've kind of spoken about the fact that actually 5 years has still felt really good. Like you are still finding your feet for the first couple of years, just being like, okay, what is it that I want to do, or the first year or whatever, like how do we work together, first of all, like what are our ways of working, what do we want to do together, how do we build some momentum with that, and then you have some time to really play in that, 3 years for playing, experimenting, really putting your stamp on it, and then you're starting to kind of go through that transition again and put things in place for the next people and think about succession. So for us, 5 years felt really important. And like Kamina, in terms of that kind of initial intention, was around that direct challenge to the sector of like staying in leadership for a long time. And when you're in in cultural spaces, that often is the thing. And there's not, I guess we have particular ideas of as a society of like what success means and like where do you go if you've led something for so long, like what do you do? And taking a step to the side can feel really like weird or bad vibes or feel like you failed. Also, there's not a lot of leadership opportunities anyway, so it's not like you can just go to another space and lead in another context. So part of that is also for us around making space and being able to step away with the intention of like people will be able to kind of create their own things. And particularly a thing out of our Be It leadership program, a lot of those young people have started to set up their own spaces, their own groups, and that feels really like generative and positive. So we hope that actually being able to create a supported process where you can lead for 5 years and then step away, you can really think about the life cycle, not of only of an organisation, but as an individual very differently. So yeah, that's 5 years. So next question, what have you learned so far about transitioning leadership? Sorry, Jess gets the hard questions.
I feel like you need to answer this too.
Both. Yeah, we can both.
So far, I think, like I said, about that kind of holding all the different tensions has been the really big theme, because it's like, I sometimes find myself, like a community member the other night after a session was asking me about how I'm feeling about leaving. And I was like, great, I'm so excited it's finally happening. We've been talking about this for so long. Like, it's really positive for the agency. And she was like, yeah, but how about you? Like, you're going to be out of a job. How do you feel about that? And I was like, oh, terrified. Yeah. And there's like this kind of holding all of that at once. I think it's particularly pertinent, like with members of the team who are talking about whether they're going to apply and step up, and what that means for them if they get it or if they don't, how that changes their relationships with the community in the meantime. So I think in terms of what I've learned is like those tensions are actually like where the good stuff happens. It really like helps you set your boundaries. It really makes you realize like what is really important to you, why you're a leader even in the first place, and also what's important about stepping aside, because it makes you kind of like double down on it, I guess, and be like, no, it is really important to make this change. Do I wish we were exiting into a better job market? Yes, but I think that idea of like, committing to the change and seeing it through has felt really like, in a very fluid process, has felt really like tangible and solid.
Yeah, no, but I resonate with a lot of the stuff, particularly around navigating the different tensions. And I think one of the things that I've really enjoyed about this process is actually that I feel like it's enabled, I won't speak for Jess, but I'll say that it's enabled me to feel more creative in terms of like, how you're approaching this next time. It kind of gives you, like, that was something that we've always kind of spoken to, when people have asked about having that 5-year deadline. Like, you have to be really clear about what you're here to do. Otherwise, the time just goes, and it goes really quickly. And so, you get to this point where I feel like even now, I feel like I'm kind of almost hiding behind the transition, because like people will say, hi, how are you? How's it all going? And you'd be like, yeah, we've got this amazing process, and let me tell you about the 3 stages. It's very culty, don't worry. But I think it's actually challenging me in terms of what it means to be in transition. And it's interesting because my mum is like just about to retire in at the end of this month, or end of March, and it's really interesting kind of going through that process together almost. And it's not obviously exactly the same, but she's complete opposite to how we are, but she worked at her place for 36 years, coming to retire. We don't really know who this woman is without work, and just really being able to clock the things that help keep us grounded. And often it is a job title, and it is where you work. And I think that has been the thing that is, a bit uncomfortable, but also really exciting. So yeah, that's the things that I'm learning about transitioning leadership.
We've kind of started this, but how are you feeling about leaving?
I feel actually quite excited. I do feel excited. I think, we've done a couple of workshops with our community recently, and it's been really nice to kind of sit back and listen to hear how Rising has impacted them. Like, we're coming up to Rising's 10-year anniversary this year as well, which is a massive milestone. And just seeing the actual there's different people, first of all. Like, when we started out in Rising, like the community were very different. And the way that they talk about the space and what they gain from it, it still feels really valuable. And that is kind of why it feels really good for me to step away, because I'm like, why are we still here if the people that we came in here with aren't still here? So it feels really good. It feels very exciting. I think there's going to be a whole identity thing, and I kind of said to people like, watch out for my like little mental breakdown. Like, if you see me posting wild stuff on LinkedIn, like conspiracy theories and stuff, just know that it's gone not very well. But yeah, I think I am really excited about it. I think it's going to be interesting to kind of reconnect with myself outside of Rising. So yeah, what about you?
Yes, a lot of similar. I think that thing about the 5 years and the fact that we knew when we started that it was going to be 5 years, but also that we've been part of the team before that. I think both of us are like, we've done our time, kind of thing. Like, we're ready. We notice ourselves being like, I can't have this conversation again. Like, we need new energy into the agency. So I feel like, for me, I'm very ready, even though it's like, I know this is the next question, but like, no idea what's going to happen next.
Yeah. What are you going to do next? Like, cool. But yeah.
I think what's interesting is that obviously when Kamina stepped away as the founder and director for the first 5 years, she was at a completely different stage of her career. So was very much gone on this journey of like reinvigorating her artistic practice and becoming a coach and doing all these incredible things. But we're kind of like, we were given a director opportunity much earlier in our career than a lot of people get it. And so now we're kind of going like, oh, but we haven't necessarily got like director level experience, have we? Like, we know we could do it, but it's like the scale of things is different, and like the justification of it is different. But also if we go for like a non-director role, people go, but you've been co-director, why are you applying for this?
Yeah.
So that kind of like, where to pitch yourself and what you want to do next, and like not really having the financial space to really like sit in that for very long. So I think like gonna do something, but similarly have said to the community, like, if you see me working for someone and you're like, oof, just like leave me be. Like, let me get my paycheck.
Get my coin. Allow it. But very much feel similarly. Like, I think the great thing about Rising is that it's really like, actually, for both of us, we've really taken Rising into new spaces, and that's been really exciting. So like we said, like the research with KCL, like we wrote a cultural plan for a town, lol.
Investment strategy.
We wrote an investment strategy for a small town in Southwest. So we've done like loads, and I think that is one of the great things, and this is why we were really excited for whoever takes on Rising next, to be like, it is a playground if you allow it to be able to be a vehicle to do whatever you want and whatever the community wants and needs. So I think in terms of like us, I think we've gained so much experience, and it's so hard to be like on your CV like co-director and then be like investment plan and research and like all the different things, because there is so many things to it. But I think it has really helped like think about, actually, you want to work for something that you really believe in. I think that feels really important, if the job gods allow. But I think as well of like being able to challenge and try, like experiment. I think being able to experiment within whatever role I do next feels really important, because at Rising we were able to just test so many things and try it, and learning so fast. And even when we chatted to that, we worked with an IP consultant a couple of years ago, and this guy was like, y'all are creating so much IP, like, for goodness sake, stop, all the time. So I think that is the, I think wanting to be able to continue to make stuff, and whether that is like creative stuff or like systems or processes, that feels really important.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Do you have any questions? Thanks.
Straight up.
At the beginning, thank you, that was so great. At the beginning, you talked about Rising as having a particular focus on young people who might have been minoritized from the culture sector. How are you holding that affinity and that lived experience in the recruitment process?
Yes.
So like one of the
Legally.
one of the main questions we got repeatedly, no matter how many times we answered it, was, are you only open to applications from young people? And obviously, no, legally we're not. But what we've said is we hope that the next co-directors do reflect or understand that lived experience of the community. And that is really important. And I think like, particularly when you have this kind of co-director role or director in the title, like some people self-select out of that, no matter how much storytelling we can do and how much hand-holding we're like, you could do it, apply to our community. There's always going to be people who are like, that's not for me, even though we know they could be amazing. So it's definitely a consideration, as it is with all recruitment we do, like because this person also, these people need to engage with the community. They need to feel like trusted by the community. So that feels really important. But obviously we can't be like only these groups of people. But if we ended up with 2 middle-aged white men leading Rising, I don't think we would have done our job well.
Legally?
Legally.
Cheers. Firstly, you guys know how I feel about you. It's great to see you at this stage of your careers. And just a little note as well, I'm going to say it to you individually, like, don't self-select yourself out of the next opportunities that are coming, do you know what I mean? In this way that you're looking at the new applicants, don't do that to yourself, because you're very capable. We've had this conversation for 6 years now, so I'm going to come out with it. It's the same question, but given your experience now, how would you individually define leadership?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, we didn't brief you and say, give us the easy questions. I think it's really interesting because we recently received an email from a member of our community basically shouting about us and talking about how incredible it has been to watch our leadership journey and have their own alongside us. And they talked about the reasons why they didn't apply for co-directorship, even though we didn't say, like, why did you not apply? But they were like, I really thought about it, but I decided not to, and kind of gave some reasons why. And that really was so heartening in the ways in which they talked about they do still see themselves as a leader, whether it's like leading from behind or leading from the side. I think it's someone or people that can really listen, but who have energy to make things happen. As I said, I really believe it's possible to know, you need to know when to step forward and know when to step back, to be pliable, but also be strong when you need to be. Because I think that is something that at Rising, because we are such an agile agency and we're working with the sector and we're working with our community, there is a lot of negotiation and navigation, but having to really be able to stand firm in what you believe in. And I think one of the things that we looked at in terms of like, what is our criteria, right, for like deciding or whatever for this next role? And it's particularly around the co-leadership, is around that shared vision. And I think it's really important that you are able to listen and communicate that vision. But yeah, that's what has come out really strongly for me, or us, maybe.
Yeah, no, totally. I was going to say about the co-leadership vision thing. Damn. I think, yeah, it's a funny one because like I know we've had a lot of conversations about that difference between like management and leadership and how I value management, even though it's a dirty word in particularly art sector. It's very corporate. But I think there is that thing of like not just having that vision and like going off on your own, but the ability to bring people with you. And it doesn't necessarily need to be stood up at the front doing a presentation to be that leadership. It just needs to be like, oh, I think you should do that. Or like, you should apply for this thing. Like, it can literally be on that peer-to-peer level. And also sometimes that's all I got the energy for. And being able to like flex between those different levels of leadership, I think is really important. And I think from a Rising point of view, what's really important about our leadership is that like, kind of integrity is, you know, we say it a lot, but it means a lot. And like integrity, being open, honest, responsive, like being open to that change. So you're not like just heading off in a direction, everyone's falling off behind you and you're like, but I'm going there. Whether it's for your own personal motivation, commitment, like we've been talking a lot about how within the interview process can we talk about that idea of like collectivism and collective responsibility, because that's so much of what good leadership at Rising needs to look like. It's not about you and your ego, even though we want to profile people as individuals and as artists. It's much more about like, what are we doing together and where are we going to get together? So I don't have a snappy answer.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Yeah.
Hi. Thank you for this. It's really interesting. Maybe a bit of a boring question about the design of the process for the recruitment. I find it fascinating. And I'm wondering how you design it, who was consulted, who was involved, how do you reach consensus, and how did you manage risk?
Yes.
Yeah, so the transition steering group were the main people involved in designing that process. And there was kind of a lot of discussion about what those points should be and also who should be involved at each point. And it was kind of just a group discussion. So this was the one in-person session we had, and we weren't even meant to design the process in that session. We thought this would be like a preliminary conversation and then we do that later, and they just did it. And it just felt really like, I think, you know, for all the great things about hybrid working and stuff like that, sometimes when you get people together in a room, in a very small, hot room, and get some Post-it notes out, you kind of figure stuff out. And there was a lot of like, oh, what if we interviewed people together? Then would we have to do that planning session where people like come together beforehand for people who didn't have a match? And I was like, that's quite a big commitment if you haven't even decided if you're going to apply yet. So actually maybe that does need to come later in the process. So there was a lot of like...
There was a lot of tension questions. There was like a lot of, you know, someone would be like, so, but like, what if then if someone, you know, doesn't want to, or like, that's a lot of time for someone to want to be part of that. Like we, you know, it's like an 8 to 12 week process from closing applications to deciding. And so we're like, okay, we recognize that that's going to be a lot of time. Okay, we'll there'll be a stipend, thinking about, oh, but that, you know, there's going to be loads of people that's going to want to be part, like that could do the role. It's like, okay, let's create a leadership pool that we will commit to create other opportunities for and platform across the sector. And so, and like, even like in terms of like the recruitment, like the application process, like these are things that we do anyway, of like doing, you know, people can apply by video or like voice note or whatever, but actually being able to have those other questions that are like, these aren't scored questions, but this is just additional, like, be good to know. Like, do you know, is there anything that you haven't had a chance to say? Is there any contextual information that we need to know? As Jess said, is there anyone that you actually want to like do this with? And is that a non-negotiable? And those are questions that are going to help us with the matchmaking. They're not us thinking about who could lead. And so I think there's a very different thing. What we've, you know, and Jess has done a lot more thinking about this because she'll be part of leading the matchmaking, but actually like, what are you trying to match make? Is it skills? Because when Jess and I identified, like, was like, oh yeah, I would love to do it with that other person, even though we hadn't really worked together that much, we hadn't realized that actually we were quite similar with a lot of things. And so that's something that we're taking into consideration, but also we bring different skills. And it was really important to us that we got to do everything. So we're not like a traditional like theatre company where you have an executive director and a creative director. We were like, we want to share everything. And so the way in which we've set up the way that we work and the conversations that we have in the team and outside of the team enable us to have those conversations and make sure that we're both learning. But in the application process or the documents, because it was quite a big document, lol. It was like a whole, of just basically cheerleading and info. But we mapped out, like, this is how we've done our co-leadership, but you might do it in this way, and showing examples of different organizations and how they've done it. So we tried to think of everything, but obviously, like, there's going to be lots that we missed out. But it was mainly the steering group kind of being that space for us to bounce ideas, which felt the most useful. And then also having that time over a period to let things like settle in, and then be like, what questions do we still have? So that was why it was really great to kind of do it from July to December.
And I think to your point about risk.
Oh yeah, risk.
Like, the reassuring thing from that process was that actually a lot of our existing recruitment materials that we've used before were, the steering group were like, these are great, just do that, and then add all this other stuff into it. So it's something that we've done before in terms of like how we're recruiting, how we're shortlisting, how we do interviews, like all of that stuff we've done a lot of thinking about before. And I think the other side of it is that we've been trying to sort of prep the non-execs and the advisory board to a lesser extent to step a bit more into that like ownership of risk, because we were part of the agency before we became co-directors. So there's a little bit of like our governance structure is becoming more passive because we know what's going on, and that probably won't be the case for the next co-directors. It's unlikely that both of them are from within the agency. So like, how do we get them to step in more into that role? Because part of the research we were part of was like an involved board that buys into the co-leadership model is one of the main ways that co-leadership succeed. So we've been doing a lot of that, like, cool, so do you guys want a scenario plan, like for all these different options? And they were like, yes. And then there was a document that no one filled out. So it's like, okay, do we need to have a session where we all get together and fill out the document? So it's like trying to get into that. And I think, you know, that's probably a learning for something we maybe should have started earlier. But
And like, that kind of readiness across the agency and thinking about what knowledge that we hold, that we, that with maybe assumptions or, so there's a lot of that kind of like, we're getting into that handover-y process now and making sure that Rising can continue despite and in spite of the transition, because that's like, it's what we believe in, it's really important to us. But we've never done it like this before, so there might be emails that go unanswered for a little bit. Who knows? That's the hope that it won't, because we're really working with our board to kind of make sure that that is all covered, but we'll see.
Good, George.
So this might be something that you've already got in place for yourselves, or that you've already put in place for the next co-directors. But you've alluded to the cliff edge that you guys are facing as like creative professional co-directors now that your term's coming to an end. Could you imagine, or is there something in place where in 5 years' time, the people who become the co-directors have a budget for self-development to kind of support them, or like some coaching or something to help with that transition and that cliff edge that is a bit different than when you're recruiting somebody for a permanent job that is just going on indefinitely?
We've chatted about that. I think those are the things now that we're thinking about, like, it would be good to have a bit of budget. And I think that's another thing about what we're trying to navigate at the moment is, it died, sorry. What we're trying to navigate at the moment is trying to like make sure that we can put the next co-directors in the best situation and financially in terms of the agency. So doing a lot of that fundraising and stuff like that. The balance of like not wanting to commit to work that they might be like, what the heck is this? I don't want to do this. But also making sure that like we feel like we have a good exit and trying to allocate those resources. So I think definitely for the next time, that is something that we would love to like implement, of like thinking about whether you get your own version of developing your creative practice or something to be able to leave, or a little sabbatical, whatever it is. But yeah, definitely.
And I think like so every year we close the agency to external work in August and have a month of reflection. And our August were mine definitely, and I think yours too, were very much like, what am I going to do next? Like lots of reflecting about that and actually having that time to think about it, like I went into that being like, I'm going to be freelance, and came out being like, I want to get a job. So, you know, like that actually, there is already spaciousness within the agency to do some of that work. But 100%, like if we were in a financial situation now to pay for us to get coaching, we would, but we're not. So, and it's also like, do I want to take that out of whatever the next co-directors have to, it's all a balance of like, we want to spend time enjoying the last few months whilst also wanting to set up their, like, them for financial success. It's a balance.
It was kind of a comment and a question, although I think you slightly already answered, you kind of referred to what my question's going to be. I'm a trustee at Travelling Light, and so we've been working together a bit already, but I was thinking about your mum actually, Euella. I'm recently retired head teacher, and I'm very grateful that I managed to kind of work according to my values, and I just found it so encouraging, so inspiring, and just beautiful the way that you have talked about that and are really living it. And also that sense that, you know, you don't have to go on a linear journey. And, you know, I think when we've got people, obviously, like the Prime Minister, demonstrating something completely different, it's just so encouraging to hear people here in Bristol that are understanding that and living it. Anyway, but the parochial question I wanted to ask was just to make sure that that handover of support through, you know, the on-board programme, that we're going to be all right.
Oh, yeah. Don't worry, we've got you. No, but that is like, we've set in some really big like planning days with our non-execs, and also we've been upskilling our community in terms of facilitation. So like in terms of that, it feels like the work that we're doing is fine. It's just about that next, like securing further work to make sure that the next co-directors have a bit of cash to play with, and they're not like, great, I've got this job, I've got a fundraise for my role or my existence. So yeah, but it's great to hear that you're recently retired. And just like, your mum enjoys it. I hope so too. Like, yeah, definitely. At least I've got a bit more time to focus on being like, hey girl, let's live life.
Employed together.
Yeah. It's like, yeah, not great timing.
Hi, I've got a question. Yeah, it's really inspiring, thank you. It also just came across to me really, like, it's really brave and it felt really original. But you did mention there were other companies or other organisations that you've looked at. I was wondering if you could give us any examples of other organisations around the world that maybe have a 5-year term thing they have to grapple with, or have you taken inspiration from anywhere else?
Not on the term apart from politics, lol.
Yeah, which is interesting. No, I don't, like, in terms of the 5-year term, I don't think that that's something we've seen in the same way. We've seen a few more co-leaderships. And I remember we had this really interesting conversation with this organisation in America. Do you remember? And we were on...
with the young people we're going to step up, and then COVID happened.
And there was a director who I think said, I'm very type A. And it was like, okay, cool. And then there was these two that were waiting to step up. And I think that was another thing that in the research that we were looking at and we were part of, there was a conversation about the length of time of handover. And there's actually a disparity between how long a founder, particularly, or founder director, they're like, oh yeah, you're gonna need like loads of time to be able to get up to speed. And the people stepping in is like, nah mate, just move out the way, we can do this. And so that's what we've also been mindful of. And it's also that question around risk, around like, we've kind of been like, okay, so we've given about a month for us to do some really intensive, fun, whatever, handover with the next co-directors. And obviously the non-execs and the board will still be there. But some people are like, excuse me, like, where are you guys going? That's really quick. And like when you're having conversations with funders and stuff like that, making sure that that feels good too. But in terms of explicit examples.
No, I don't know. I mean, obviously some people have like where their contract is attached to a project, but it's quite different for leadership. I think in terms of the co-leadership, it's been really interesting, like over the last 5 years. So the research was done by Claire Antrobus. So if you want to look that up, there's loads of like really interesting case studies in that, particularly around like why they work and how they don't. And that was at the same time, I think Zach Mensa went from Bristol Museums to Birmingham into a co-leadership. And so they were one of the main case studies. But we've also, like actually in the last kind of year, learned of quite a few organisations that have had multiple co-directors, and one of which, Cole Theatre in Liverpoolish, Yorkshire.
Yorkshire.
She told us the specific place, and we were
Everyone's like, those are two different places.
yeah, no, Yorkshire. And they have like a flat structure where everyone is paid the same and everyone is a co-director. Because they were like, why is someone doing community delivery paid less than someone writing funding bids? That's a very simplified version of it. But they'd actually, the disparity ended up being much more like how many days people were in. And so they're like looking at different models and things like that. And I think it's also that leadership has been really important to us. But I do think there's this conversation about non-hierarchical organisations and like flat structures and stuff that's always kind of over here. And it's something I'm personally very sceptical about, because I feel like when you say you have a flat structure, like certain people rise to the top of those flat structures. But I do think there's an interesting conversation about how you go from that like co-directorship to genuine like collective, cooperative models, that kind of thing. So there's been a few. So MAC UK is another one. They've had various numbers of co-directors over the years. I think they currently have 2. But yeah, but the term thing I think is the thing that people are like, what?
Yeah.
And to come in and be like, you've only got 5 years. Good luck.
Yeah.
That's going to be the bye.
Yeah, like handover and then good luck.
All right, well,
Thank you.
That is all the time we have for now. I know there's more questions, but you guys are here for a little bit. You can be able to answer them. But please, everyone, join me in saying thank you again to Euella and Jess.
Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. Thank you, Nikki.
All right, before you go, if you want to stick around in Hot Desk today or find out more about what we do, please come find one of the studio team. We'll be happy to help. Studio team, give us a wave. Here we are. If you're watching online, drop us a line at studio@watershed.co.uk with any questions. If you like what you've seen here today and you want to help us keep bringing you great talks like this one, please do visit watershed.co.uk/donate. Watershed is a charity, and we really do rely on the generosity of our supporters to continue our work. Thank you all for being here today, and we'll see you again next time.
Yeah.